Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily Ferrier, here to bring you some uplifting stories in these trying times. So for our first story, a new handheld 3D printer can deposit sheets of skin to cover large burn wounds, and its bioink can accelerate the healing process. The device, developed by a team of researchers from the University of Toronto Engineering and Sunnybrook Hospital, covers wounds with a uniform sheet of biomaterial, stripe by stripe. The bioink dispensed by the roller is composed of mesenchymal stroma cells, MSCs, stem cells that differentiate into specialized cell types depending on their environment. In this case, MSC material promotes skin regeneration and reduces scarring. The project is led by Richard Chang, under the supervision of Professor Axel Gunther, and in a close collaboration with Dr. Mark Jensink, director of the Ross Tilley Burn Center, and his team at Sunnybrook Hospital. Their successful in vivo trials in full-thickness wounds are reported in the journal Biofabrication. The paper is a major step forward for the team, which unveiled the first prototype in the skin printer in 2018. The device was still believed to be the first device of its kind to form tissue in situ, depositing and setting into place in 2 minutes or less. So we're going to read about what was said about it when it was first unveiled in 2018. Researchers at U of T have developed a handheld 3D skin printer that can quickly manufacture fresh skin tissue that can cover and fill a wound in less than 2 minutes. And the team believes that it's the first contraption of its time. The device is shaped similarly to a packing tape dispenser, except that instead of tape, it distributes tissue sheets made out of protein-based biomaterials, including collagen, the most abundant protein source and involved in wound healing. The printed material can penetrate all 3 layers of skin to properly heal the wound. Currently, the preferred method of treating these kinds of injuries with skin grafts requires larger portions of donor skin. Because there's rarely enough donor skin to cover the injured area, it usually leads to poor recovery and the healing process. Although bioengineered skin tissues have already been developed, none of them have been used quite that widely. Most current 3D bioprinters are bulky, work at low speeds, and are very expensive and incompatible with clinical application, explains Professor Axel Gunther. Our skin printer promises to tailor to issue-specific patients and wound characteristics, says PhD student Naveed Hakimi, who led the research. And it's all very portable. According to the research, they must complete further testing before starting human trials, but they hope that one day it will revolutionize the way that physicians treat burn victims. Previously, we proved that we could deposit cells onto a burn, but there wasn't any proof that there were any wound healing benefits And now we've demonstrated that. The current method of care for burns is skin grafting, which requires transplantation of healthy skin from other parts of the body onto the wound. But large full-body burns pose a greater challenge. Full-thickness burns are characterized by the destruction of both the outermost and innermost layers of the skin. These burns often cover a significant portion of the body. With big burns, you don't have sufficient healthy skin available, which could lead to patient deaths. Since 2018, the printer has gone through 10 redesigns as the team moves towards a design they envision surgeons using an operating room. The current prototype includes single-use microfluidic printhead that ensures sterilization and a soft wheel that follows the track of the printhead, allowing for better control for wider wound. Next, Cheng says that they ultimately want to further reduce the amount of scarring. On top of helping with wound healing, scarring, of course, can be a source of extreme self-conscious in patients and burn victims. It's a reminder of what happened. It feels like it's not you in a way. It feels foreign. So I totally understand like the feeling of scars, and not wanting to have them on your body. So it's amazing that not only have they developed this way to ensure a sterile, safe new skin graft that doesn't require donors, and doesn't require quite the same healing process, and it's much quicker, obviously, as well. But the idea of there being less scarring is quite incredible. He believes that the handheld skin printer could be seen in a clinical setting within the next 5 years. So the hope is that by 2025, we'll be able to see this used in an operating room, which would be very exciting for burn victims, for people who have lost a significant amount of skin for any reason. So yeah, that would be absolutely life-altering and a huge feat for the scientific community as well, and quite a bit easier for these surgeries for doctors and physicians, and it could really cut down on waiting times for operating rooms and things like that as well. So there's quite a few very positive things coming out of this. He says, once it's used in an operating room, I think this printer will be a game changer in saving lives. With a device like this, it could change the entirety of how we practice burn and trauma care. Yeah, so this is a massive advancement in the treatment of burn victims and the treatment of burns and in surgeries. So this is great. This is great news. And if you have any more questions, do look into it more. Hopefully, in the next 5 years, we'll be able to have this as a possibility. So this is very, very good, very exciting stuff. It's very cool. When we come back, a new form of regeneration, in a way. We're going to be talking about earning degrees through programs offered in prisons, and also where those types of earnings, where they can lead, and what kinds of amazing things can be done by people learning and experimenting in prison. So we're going to talk about that when we return from our break.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about a new way to use 3D printing to regenerate skin. Huge advancements in the medical community. And now it's a win-win for the public. These New York prisoners proudly earned their college degrees while they were still behind bars. They were part of the latest graduating class consisting of inmates who've gotten their diplomas for free through Hudson Link, a nonprofit degree-granting program dedicated to providing prisoners with college education so they are less likely to reoffend upon release. According to Hudson Link, the general rate of recidivism is 43%. 43% chance of ending up reoffending. While prisoners who walk out with degrees have only a 2% chance of being reincarcerated. Huge decrease. Huge decrease. 41% decrease. The organization argues that it costs a whopping $60,000 per year to jail an individual in New York State, but only $5,000 to provide them with a prison education. Hudson Link is capable of offering the degree program for free, thanks to private donations and sponsorships. The organization is currently operating out of 5 different New York prisons, including the Sing Sing Correctional Facility in Ossining, where this emotional graduation ceremony took place last month. To date, Hudson Link has awarded 700 different degrees to inmates, an additional 600 students in state prison who are currently enrolled in the program. The organization was founded by Sean Picca, who served his own prison sentence back in 1998. Upon release after completing a reduced sentence for 16 years, Picca began his trailblazing work with the hopes of offering other inmates a second chance beyond prison walls. I think a lot of prisons in this country were built on an effort of punishment. But when you punish somebody, there's got to be something about rehabilitation and second chances, and that's what we're doing in these prisons, Picca told Freethink. So that's huge. That's a huge decrease in reoffense. Obviously, if we help rehabilitate, we can get people to get out of crime and into some more constructive things for our country. So why not do it? I think this is a huge and very exciting and important initiative that he has had. So it's great. It's really good news. Some more good news from behind bars. A team of female conservationists is helping to save the endangered butterfly species in Oregon. And they're doing it all from within the bars of a prison. Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, the only women's prison in the state, hosts a conservation program that recruits inmates to care for the Taylor's checker spot butterfly. Since losing most of its habitat in the Pacific Northwest, the butterfly was officially listed as the endangered species several years ago. And thanks to the women in Coffee Creek, over 1,200 larvae have been raised, and then released back into the wild since the program's creation in 2017. During the program's inaugural year alone, the team released almost 600 butterflies that were raised in their facility. In March, they released hundreds more. The program was created in collaboration with the Oregon Zoo, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Institute for Applied Ecology as a source of rehabilitation for the inmates' preservation of the species. Not only does the facility provide a controlled, isolated environment for the butterflies with a team of dedicated workers on hand, it provides essential job skills and psychological relief for the inmates trained to work in the lab. I can't imagine anything more relaxing than working with butterflies and in the research and preservation of endangered species of butterflies. I think this is a really beautiful metaphor in a way for imprisoned people, to be in their cocoon and then released and spreading their wings beautifully and, rejoining society in that way. Having a captive rearing and release program in Oregon is vital for the recovery of Taylor's checker spots. So it's not only for the inmates, it's a huge thing for the environment as well. The Oregon Zoo butterfly conservationist Rhonda Nassif, who advises the program at Coffee Creek, said in an interview. Additionally, she said inmates who have had the opportunity to participate in species recovery programs are eager to share what they've learned with their loved ones. That has the wonderful ripple effect of more and more people in our communities caring about the future of these butterflies. So it's making ripples in the society overall as a whole. Carolyn Exum, one of the lab's 5 butterfly technicians, who was incarcerated on a 24-year sentence for a felony murder charge, told the Oregon Public Broadcasting for the interview, it feels like I'm in an actual lab. We work professionally together, takes you out of the actual prison environment and gives you a sense of peace. I often say when I'm going to work that I'm saving the earth one butterfly at a time. And I feel like I'm part of a bigger picture. It starts here. Once Exum is eligible for release in 2024, she says she plans on using her experience to begin a career in conservation and to give lectures on the importance of the Coffee Creek program. So this program is another incredible thing that is helping prisoners reform and change their ways and re-enter into society stronger and better than before. So this is very excellent news. So that's it for our section on prison reform and the importance of these programs that are helping our incarcerated population re-enter into society. And now, when we come back from the break, of course, we're going to have some great news from Australia, which has not had great news coming out of it recently, but we do have some good news to offer you when we return from the break. So please stay tuned. I'm going to do that when we return.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
For the break, we ended off on a note of conservation, and now we have some more good news. After months of bushfires raging across the Australian coast, elated firefighters have just announced that they have managed to contain all of the fires. This exciting news comes after a week of historic rainfall in New South Wales, the Australian Capital Territory. Although there are still 24 active fires burning in the region, they are small enough for firefighters to manage accordingly. After what's been a truly devastating fire season for both firefighters and residents who have suffered through so much this season, all fires are now contained in New South Wales, which is great news. Says Rural Fire Service Deputy Commissioner Rob Rogers. Not all fires are out. This is important to note. There are some fire activity in the far south of the state, but all fires are contained, so we can really focus on helping people rebuild. Prior to the start of the downpour last week, there were 61 active fires, 20 of which were uncontained. Many of the bushfires have been fueled by drought, conditions that plagued eastern Australia for the last 3 years. However, thanks to Mother Nature and her beautiful, beautiful rain that was pouring down in the last week or so, I think you probably have seen it. Sydney, which is the largest city in Australia, enjoyed their wettest day on record in about 15 months. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, the welcomed rainfall has also helped to refill Sydney's reservoirs to their highest levels since the drought that began in November of 2018. With the state dams reporting, on average, over a 75% capacity. As the rainfall continues to extinguish the bushfires still burning across Australia, the Brigade of Soldiers has been doing their part to help recovering wildlife use their rest periods to help injured koalas. How adorable is that? The 9th Brigade of the Australian Army recently posted a photo of their soldiers from the 16th Regiment Emergency Support Force bottle feeding koalas at the Cleland Wildlife Park in the Adelaide Hills. According to the brigade's Facebook post, soldiers have been using their time off the bushfire relief work to care for the koalas and build climbing structures for their recovering marsupials. Since the photos were posted on social media a few weeks ago, they have been shared over 45,000 times, and I'm not surprised. You should look at the picture. It is so cute. Not only have the soldiers been offering a helping hand to the Wildlife Center, they've also been helping to clear away debris, hosting community benefits, and offering emotional support to the affected Australians, tidying up residential properties, Thankfully, due to the torrential rainfall across New South Wales and the Australian Capital Territory, has extinguished more than 30 of the region's active bushfires. And officials say the downpour could put out the rest of the fires by the end of the week. Although the downpour has resulted in some flooding across the provinces, the New South Wales Rural Fire Service says they are over the moon to see the rainfall aiding them in their fight against the bushfires. These are some beautiful stories, and really look up the photos. So sweet. We're starting to heal it. I will remind everyone that just because the bushfires are coming to an end does not mean that Australia does not still need help. So if you were considering donating to any cause that helped the Australian relief, don't stop now just because you think that they're finished now so they can move on. Obviously, their homes have still been destroyed and people have been evacuated. And we can't just stop aiding because of the bushfires being put out. There is still a lot of repercussions from the bushfires. But this is such good news for Australia. And one little more Australian bushfire story. A courageous pup is being credited for saving an entire flock of sheep from the bushfires in Australia. This was on New Year's Eve. Stephen Hill saw the wildfires approaching his sister's farm in Australia at around 4:15 a.m. Hill and his 6-year-old pup Patsy then rushed over to the farm, hopped onto a four-wheeler and rode on to where the sheep were wandering the fields. Quick as a flash, Patsy rounded up the herd and ushered them into a barn, while the farm owner fended off the flames with his tractor and water pump. Thanks to Patsy's quick actions, almost every single one of the 220 sheep were saved from the fires. If you haven't got a good dog, you can't do so much with the sheep. They're really difficult to move in any way, shape, or form unless you have a good sheep herding dog. Since Patsy's heroic story has been shared across international news outlets and social media, her owners have started an Instagram account for the Terrier Shepherd mix, and it's gained several thousand followers. So that's one more very sweet story coming out of the bushfires. Who doesn't love a heroic dog story? So this is very good news coming out of Australia when we have had so many devastating news stories come out of there. So I really, even though it's not an American story, I really thought that you guys would like to hear about the incredible things happening over there that we have been so scared of. I know, we'd sent out firefighters to help. So America has been quite involved in this overall, but it's good to know that it's doing something. So this is great. When we come back, we are going to be talking about some good news towards the cutting down of global emissions in a couple of different ways. Because I love to talk about the environment on this show, I think we all know. So we're going to be talking about some of that when we return from the break. I hope you guys are as passionate about the environment as I am, because obviously I tend to stick to that as a basic concept for the show. So I hope you do enjoy it. And, if you don't, maybe I'll ease off on it. Well, we'll hope for the latter, or for the former. We'll hope that you do enjoy it. So that's when we return from our break. So stay tuned for that, please. We're going to talk about another form of recovery when we come back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. So when we left, we were talking about the great things happening in Australia to ensure that that the bushfires are getting put out, and that there will be some healing for that following the bushfires. And now, an exciting new study calculated that, contrary to expectations, global carbon dioxide emissions did not continue their increase in 2019, but actually flatlined as a renewable energy source, efficiency, and other factors chipped away at the worldwide CO2 levels. Research is conducted by the International Energy Agency and published earlier this week. It found that emissions were unchanged at 33 gigatons, and in 2019, as the world economy expanded by 2.9%. This was primarily due to the declining emissions from electricity generation in advanced economies, thanks to the expanding role of renewable resources like wind and solar, by shutting down coal plants and higher nuclear power generation. Other factors included milder weather in several countries due to require less cooling and heating, and slower economic growth in some emerging markets. We now need to work hard to make sure that 2019 is not a definitive peak, and not just a pause in growth, says Dr. Faith Barrell, the IEA's executive director. We have energy technologies to do this, and we have to make use of them all. The IEA is building a grand coalition focused on reducing emissions, encompassing governments, companies, investors, and anyone with a genuine commitment to tackling our climate challenge. A significant decrease in emissions in the advanced economies in 2019 offset continued growth elsewhere. The United States recorded the largest emissions decline on a country basis with a fall of 140 million tons, or 2.9%. U.S. emissions are now down by almost 1 gigaton from their peak in 2000. Emissions by the EU fell 160 million tons, or 5%, in 2019 due to reductions in the power sector. Natural gas produced more electricity than coal in the first time ever. Meanwhile, wind-powered electricity nearly caught up with the coal-fired electricity. Japan's emissions fell by about 45 million tons, or around 4%, the fastest decline since 2009, an output from restarted nuclear reactors. Emissions from the world grew close to 40 million tons in 2019, with almost 80% of the increase coming from Asia, where coal-fired power generation continues to rise. Across advanced economies, emissions from the power sector declined to levels last seen in 1980s, when electricity demand was on the one-third lower than today. Coal-fired power generation advanced in economies declined by 15% as a result of growing renewables, coal to gas switching, a rise in nuclear power, and weaker electricity demand. The welcomed halt in emissions growth is grounds for optimism that we can tackle the climate challenge in this decade, says Dr. Barrell. It is evidence that clean energy transitions are underway, and it is also a signal that we have opportunity to meaningfully move the needle on emissions through ambitious policies and investments. The agency will also hold an IEA Clean Energy Transition Summit in Paris on July 9th, bringing together key government ministers, CEOs, investors, and other major stakeholders from around the world to promote and support more real-world solutions. So this is huge. This is huge news that we are plateauing. So there is hope that we can reduce our carbon footprint and we can reverse, well, possibly not reverse, obviously, because it's already put in motion, but we can slow down global warming if we really stick to these policies and maybe increase some of them. Other things being done for emissions, 37% of Norway's automotive market currently consists of electric cars and hybrid cars, but the northern nation announced a plan to accelerate that number to 100% by 2025. Over the course of the next 8 years, the Norwegian Parliament will prepare to ensure that all cars sold in the country will either be low or zero emission vehicles, and they hope to achieve their goal by implementing a stronger green tax system with more financial incentives rather than a total ban on fossil fueled powered vehicles. Since 1990, Norway has offered more than a dozen financial and lifestyle benefits to electric or hybrid car owners. These perks include priority highway access, a 50% reduced company car tax, annulled fees on toll roads and ferries, and free parking municipalities. In order to accommodate the ever-increasing number of low-emission vehicles, Norway plans on constructing at least one charging station for every 10 electric cars on the road, amounting to at least 50,000 by 2020. So it's unclear on whether the charging stations would still be powered by fossil fuels or coal plants. There are nevertheless numerous environmental benefits to exclusivity using hybrid or electronic cars. According to Sherry Boskert, author of Plug-in Hybrids, the cars that will recharge America, using hybrids and electric cars that draw power from the traditional electric grid would drastically reduce the amount of nitrous oxide released in the air by 32% to 99%. Nitrogen oxides have proved to be very dangerous, with negative effects on people's health as well as the environment. Switching to low-emission vehicles could also reduce CO2 emissions by as much as 17 to 71, depending on the area. So these are huge advancements, of course, in the reducing of our carbon footprint and emissions. So we do need to make these initiatives. So good on you, Norway, for making that. This is very good news. And we'll continue to bring you these stories as they come in. When we return from the break, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of fitness, and some people that are showing us these benefits live, in motion, and really making kind of like huge steps towards making America fitter and more healthy. That's when we return.
Pets bring such joy to our lives, and the GSMC Pets podcast is here to share in that joy. We'll tell stories of pets finding their forever homes, acting in unexpected ways, being helpful, or just being silly. Whether you love dogs, cats, llamas, reptiles, fish, or you've never met an animal you didn't like, the GSMC Pets podcast is for you.
Before the break, we were talking about some good things for the environment. And now we're going to talk good things for your health. This 91-year-old man has not only become a role model for his entire gym, but also to thousands of people on the internet. Lloyd Black resolved to join the Anytime Fitness gym in Semmes, Alabama last year after he found himself struggling to accomplish simple household tasks. He hoped that joining a gym might strengthen some of his muscles and to help with random aches and pains in parts of his body. Over the course of a year, Black has been diligently working out at the gym 3 times a week, despite how his outfits garner plenty of attention. He says that he prefers to wear overalls and coveralls during his workouts because they're warm, comfortable, and he has trouble keeping his pants up otherwise. When Black first joined Anytime Fitness, the gym manager, Ashley Seaman, said that he could barely last 10 minutes on the treadmill without becoming winded. Now, however, the senior can effortlessly breeze through a half hour of power walking before moving on to his workout routine. He says he also takes time to help with seniors new to the gym to learn how to use the weightlifting machines. He's just a friendly soul, Seaman told Today. It's cute because he will go out to the other silver sneakers, the elderly members, and he'll show them how to use the machines. As a means of praising Black for his progress, Seaman recently named Black Member of the Month, which I'm sure felt amazing to hear, next to all of these young, fit people that are certainly bound to be smug. Mr. Black became part of our Anytime family 1 year ago, and we've seen nothing but motivation and inspiration from him since he started, the gym wrote on their Facebook page. He says he's 91 years young, and he brags about how much his workout routine has helped him in his daily routines. Seeing someone like him inspires others to keep it up and to incorporate fitness into their lives, he added. Seeing him at the gym 3 days a week, working out in his overalls, brightens up our day, and we hope to have him many years to come. Black's photos have now been shared thousands of times across social media, while internet users praise Black for being such a positive role model. He even says that before his feet hit the floor, he'll do his bicycle exercises in bed to help him get up and do things in the morning. He says age is just a number, doesn't mean you can't go to the gym, and that it's never too late. In other exercise news, training for completing a first-time marathon actually reverses the aging of major blood vessels, according to some new research. The study, which was conducted by the European Society of Cardiology, also found that older and slower runners benefit the most. Novice runners who trained for 6 months and completed their first marathon had a 4-year reduction in arterial age and a drop in systolic blood pressure, says Anish Bova at the University College in London. This is comparable to the effect that medication that maintained translates to approximately a 10% lower risk of stroke in an overall lifetime. A hallmark of normal aging is stiffening of the blood vessels, which increases the risk of stroke and heart disease, even in healthy people. Compared to their peers, lifelong athletes have biologically younger blood vessels. And this study investigated whether training for a marathon could modify aortic stiffness in even novice runners. The study included 139 first-time marathon runners who were aged 21 to 69 years old, who were advised to follow a first-time program and ran an estimated 6 to 13 miles a week for 6 months ahead of completing the 2016 or 2017 London Marathon. Before they started training, they had 2 weeks after completing the marathon. Participants had a magnetic resonance in imaging, MRIs, and ultrasounds, scans of their heart and blood vessels, and the measurements of blood pressure and heart rate. Biological age of the aorta was calculated at both points. After completing the marathon, aortic stiffness had reduced, and the aorta was 4 years younger than before training. Older participants and those with longer marathon finish times had greater reductions in aortic stiffness. After training, reductions in aortic stiffness were independent of changes in blood pressure. You don't have to be an elite athlete to gain the benefits of marathon running. In fact, the benefits appeared greatest in those who were older and slower. By completing the training and getting to the finish line, it's possible to rejuvenate the cardiovascular system of first-time marathon runners. The minimal impact of these conventional markers of health suggests that the study participants trained within their personal limits. Aortic stiffness and blood pressure changed more than fitness and heart rate. The study shows that health gains of lifetime exercise start to appear in relatively brief training program. Training for a marathon can be a good motivator to keep active. Many people enjoy it and continue running, which should increase the likelihood of sustaining the benefits. The benefits of exercise on the heart and circulation are well established and are associated with lower cardiovascular disease and mortality. Recent studies have shown the exercise may retard aging of the cardiovascular system, and our study shows that first-time marathons make the cardiovascular system younger, therefore participants will reap the benefits whilst running for a good cause, says Professor Sanjay Sharma, medical director of the London Marathon and author of the study. So that's great. So exercising when you're older can actually be almost more beneficial than when you're younger. So if you are worried about cardiovascular disease or heart failure, or it runs in your family, make sure that you get out there and train for that marathon and run it for a good cause. When we return, I would like to do another one of those good news and histories for today's date, because I love it, and today is a particularly special day for history, because it is one of my favorite singer-songwriters' birthday, and we'll find out who that is, but only when you return from the break.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. So when we left off, we were talking about the importance of exercise and the benefits that it can give you for your heart and for overall well-being. So now to our good news in history from today's date. I'm recording this on the 13th of February, so that will be the good news that I'm recording. So happy 70th birthday to Peter Gabriel, the English singer-songwriter who is one of the most influential progressive rock innovators of all time. At 17, he founded the band Genesis and later launched a successful solo career, winning 6 Grammy Awards. After his first hit, my favorite song, Salisbury Hill, he released the enormous 1986 number 1 single, Sledgehammer, which I danced to in the car growing up, which won a record 9 MTV Awards with the stop-motion claymation video that was ridiculous and was the most played music video of all time, opening the door for artists and bands to get creative and allow their music to stand up with captivating visuals. The album entitled So was certified 5 times platinum and was brimming with perfect songs like Big Time, In Your Eyes, Red Rain, Don't Give Up, a duet with Kate Bush. Gabriel, an anti-apartheid activist, was an advocate for world peace, co-founded The Elders with Richard Branson. In 2007, a group of wide world leaders that was launched with Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. Music industry reports have promised a new LP with the original songs forthcoming. So in the meantime, if you haven't seen the Sledgehammer video, watch it, because that is quite the video. More good news on this date. The first public school in the U.S., Boston Latin School, was founded. Benjamin Franklin was its most famous dropout, and that was in 1635 on today's date. Spain recognized Portugal's independence in 1668 on today's date. I think these are the earliest dates that we're getting on this segment. The feminist newspaper, La Citoyenne, was published in Paris by Hubertine Auclert and lasted 10 years until 1891, and it was established in 1881 on today's date. The ASCAP Union, American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, was established to protect the copyrights of members' music in 1914. Canadian Hal Foster published his first Prince Valiant comic strip with superb medieval detailing, an illustrated historical novel that he would write and illustrate in for the next 42 years, and that was established in 1937 on today's date. An agreement was reached for a 2-stage plan to reunite Germany in 1990 on today's date. 2 years after Hurricane Katrina devastated the region, 1,500 volunteers gathered in a one-day blitz to erect playgrounds for nearly 36,000 New Orleans children, playgrounds that were designated by the school's own students in 2007. Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd makes historic apology to the Indigenous Australians and their stolen generation in 2008. Washington became the 7th U.S. state to legalize same-sex marriage in 2012 on February the 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. And on this day in 1973, a concert at the Rainbow Theatre in London heralded the return of Eric Clapton, from heroin-induced isolation, a comeback after 2 years of inactivity, arranged by his friend Pete Townsend. The show was recorded for an LP that featured the pair, along with Ronnie Wood and Steve Winwood, doing the amazing Clapton songs from the Yardbirds and Cream. In the following 12 months, Clapton recovered from his drug addiction and recorded for 61 Ocean Boulevard. And on this day in 2004, astronomers announced the discovery of the universe's largest known diamond, 2,300 miles wide, with 10 billion trillion carats. It was actually the remnant of the white dwarf star in the constellation of Centaurus that researchers nicknamed Lucy, after the Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. When this particular type of white dwarf crystals in its material, carbon and oxygen, crystallizes and shines like a diamond. So those are the good news from today, and so I liked these good news ones particularly today, just because it's Valentine's Day, I wanted to do a couple of fun facts about Valentine's Day, just before it's that beautiful day with your loved ones. So who is this mysterious saint, Saint Valentine? Where do the traditions come from? The legend of Saint Valentine is that the patron saint is a little bit shrouded in mystery. We do know that February has been celebrated, but who is he? The Catholic Church recognizes at least 3 different saints named Valentine or Valentinus, all of whom were martyred. One legend contains that Valentine was a priest who served during the 3rd century in Rome. When Emperor Claudius II decided that single men made better soldiers than those with wives and families, he outlawed marriage for young men. Valentine, realizing the injustice, defied Claudius and continued to perform marriages for young lovers in secret. When he was discovered, he was put to death. Others insist that he was a bishop, and others suggest that he was killed in an attempt to help Christians escape Roman prisons. One legend imprisoned Valentine actually sent the first Valentine's greeting himself after he fell in love with a young girl, a jailer's daughter, who visited him during confinement. And it's alleged that he wrote his letter signed "From Your Valentine," expression that is still used today. I choose to think that it was the one where he was marrying people, because that is the most romantic one. The day was actually declared by Pope Gelasius, February 14th, Valentine's Day. And it was not until later that it was associated with love during the Middle Ages. It used to be the beginning of birds' mating season. So a day for romance, if ever there was one. This was confirmed by a 1375 poem, Parliament of Fowls. Birds coming to choose their mates. So that's it for our stories today. Have a great Valentine's Day with your loved ones. Get them some nice chocolates. And thank you for listening to the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review and rate the episode. It really helps us. Also, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks and good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast.